Well, it's a great privilege to be here today. Coventry as well, so I'm reasonably local, which is always a thrill. I'm not flying around the world to do things. So, by the way, if you're tweeting, there's all my sort of information that you're going to need. Now, a little bit about me. I accidentally fell into academia. This wasn't my sort of, life dream. It happened a few years ago. And through a series of accidents, I ended up becoming an academic. And I've been trying to escape ever since, which has been a bit of a challenge. So I started my career as an engineer. Actually working in production control, manufacturing systems, and then really moving into supply chain. What is really interesting is that, I've done various things within that, and then I got this thing, I'm now Professor and Chair of Supply Chain Strategy at Cranfield, and Cranfield's an interesting place because we're totally postgraduate. So, if you're looking at the average age of people on our master's programs, it's around about 27 years old. We don't have undergraduates within the university, but it's all about technology and management. We have our own airfield, for example, and they're just about to have one of the first autonomous vehicle test tracks actually set up through the middle of our campus, which is going to create massive problems with car parking. And as the Vice-Chancellor says, academics, a university is a collection of academics with one common interest: car parking. Right? That's what universities are made of. So this is quite an interesting place. We also have aircraft evacuation simulators. We pay people £15 to be the first off. And we find that creates the level of panic required to get people off these planes. So we do things like that as well. I've done a lot on supply chain risk management, and my goal is knowledge into action. I'm also chairman of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Next year is going to be our 100th anniversary, all about the movement of goods, of people, and their associated supply chains. And this is really exciting because one of the things that we're going to be talking about during this session is innovation. And the Institute is really sort of moving forward in getting people together so we can share ideas. And events like this are so important for the industry. So do go and see our stand and do sort of, hopefully, become a member and join us on the journey we're going on. So this is basically where we work at Cranfield, all over the world, lots of different companies. But let's get down to business. I thought really long and hard about what I was going to talk to you about today. And really what I want to talk about is learning a new language. Learning languages is really important. And so I'm going to look at a number of languages that I really feel that the profession needs to understand and needs to really engage in. We've been doing a lot of stuff the same way for many, many years, and we're not getting inroads on some of these issues. So what I want to actually think through is by changing our language, we change the way we think. And when we change the way we think, we change our culture. So that's really what we're going to be looking at. I could have talked about loads of other stuff, and there's lots of people who will be talking about these issues. So that's actually, quite important. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the language of safety. And I've been working with a number of companies who are trying to change their safety culture. And the thing that we need to recognize is that we need to be able to get new ideas around this. So I want to share some of these ideas to help us change our language. Innovation is taking ideas that are new to you and creating economic, social, or environmental value. So how do you get new ideas into your business? How do you get them? I mean, it's great that you're all here today because you're going to hear lots of new ideas. And really the challenge is to take ideas from one industry and embed it in another industry or another sector. So this is what we're trying to do, sharing ideas. This is where the professional organisations become so important, like the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. It's where universities become so important. So people are able to share ideas and then innovate in terms of what they're doing. But if we look at some of the issues in terms of safety, this was a report which was done 10 years ago. And basically, it says that, one of the challenges which we've got, this was from the HSE, lack of safety culture in our sector. Lack of awareness and education, lack of communication engagements and standards across the industry, issues with specific loads, and extrinsic and unintentional factors, they call them. What's really interesting about this is this word culture. And here's my definition of culture. Culture is what people do in the absence of instruction when they're under a bit of pressure. Think about that. How do you act in your business when you're under a bit of pressure and nobody's telling you what to do? You know, that really gives you a bit of an interesting insight into the culture of an organisation. Now, what we actually find is, of course, that, you know, we've got some serious issues. This was The Economist, 24th of October 2015. Traffic accidents now kill more people than malaria in African countries. And it's great that TransAid are here. And also, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, we have something called Aspire, which is really interesting because education becomes so important in dealing with this issue. People don't understand the risks, they don't have the culture to be able to deal with some of these issues, you know, they don't think this way, and therefore it becomes really important to do this. And we've got various charities which are focused on this, and I would urge you, you know, go and find out about these charities. Aspire is a really interesting one, you know, enabling people to basically get bursaries and training in our sector, you know, free of charge. And there's some great stories associated with people who have decided to actually move into the sector and had their, you know, licenses funded through this. So do, you know, engage with these people while you're here. But that's bad. But if we look at the United Kingdom, and there's loads of statistics around here, but as I was looking at some, 52,000 workers suffer from work-related illness each year in our sector. 39,000 non-fatal injuries to workers each year. 14 fatal injuries to workers in 2016-2017. But then that's only looking at one set of stuff. Then we look at, you know, consider the cyclist. And I just picked on this one, and this is controversial because we might find that the cyclist actually cause some of these accidents as well. But I mean, the point is if we look at the fatalities which are going on in our sector, this is becoming really very much a challenge. We've been working with a number of companies, and one company has tried to change the language, change the culture around this. I'm really pleased that Ecolab have actually let me use their data. I mean, if you look at the bottom of this pyramid, they talk about unsafe behaviour. This is all the stuff, they collect all this data. Unsafe behaviour, 5,214 incidents. Unsafe condition, 4,156, and this goes up to near misses, high potential near misses, you know, first aid injuries, and then we've got the recordable accidents, 11 recordable accidents. But this is a statistic. It's just, you know, we hear all these stats all the time, and we've got to start changing the way we work, because people say, oh, well, the statistic is better than it was last year, but they're not really getting the improvement. So what they've started to do is change the language. So what they've actually done is they've actually then tracked the impact of all those incidents over the short term on people's lives. So look at this, a fractured elbow. That meant that a gentleman couldn't pick up his baby. He was unable to carry the baby for a while. You know, somebody chemical in eye, not allowed to drive. That's disrupted their life. Chemical burn to neck, impacted quality of sleep. What they've started to do is to actually take this, change the language around it, and what they're now finding is they're starting to get inroads in terms of the safety. Why? Because the whole issue is that the language is changing the way they think, which is changing the culture within the organisation. So I do ask, here's our first question, which we're going to have, so get ready to vote. Oh, no, it's gone. Right. We will come on to another question at another time. I thought there was a question there, but maybe it isn't there. Oh, it's come. Oh, right, fine. Things are firing at me on every angle at the moment. So my question is this. Do you understand the true impact of your safety statistics? Do you understand that number has actually impacted on somebody's life and what the impact has been on their life for that short period of time? So vote on that one now. Okay, so the results are about 50-50. That's great. So 50% of us, we need to start really understanding that side of things. Now, we need to move on to the language of service now. And one of the things that we actually find is, within the whole issue of service, is that there is two sort of dimensions. Cost advantage, lower end-to-end delivered costs, and value advantage, creating superior customer value through enhanced service. At the end of the day, what the supply chain is doing is having to link to the corporate strategy and understanding the complexity of really four key areas: the process design, the infrastructure and equipment design, the information systems design, and then finally, how we organize our people. And really, this is all about service. And one of the things I'm finding in the sector now, there has been an increasing focus on service. Customers are starting to recognize service is really one of the critical things. But once again, we need to change the language. And we're starting to see this in a variety of places. This is an example, Nabisco. Nabisco, what they're doing here is selling service, not cookies. Look at some of these things. Nabisco delivers crackers and cookies direct to your store. We carry the inventory, no overstocking. Nabisco products normally sell through before payment is due. Faster turnover, higher monthly returns, and maximum return on investment. So what we're starting to see is that organizations are seeing that they're having to actually sell service. We are part of that process. The logistics transport industry is totally core to this service that we're seeing. What we're also then finding is we're having to change the language within the business, because the statistics, again, don't tell the whole story. This is Travis Perkins. One of the challenges they had was, once again, with the language they were using. You know, oh, well, we've got 95% on time in full. What does that mean? 95% on time in full, or 95%, availability. What does that mean? Oh, well, 95% on time availability means we're losing £200,000 worth of sales. We can help you reduce those losses to £20,000. What that's basically saying is taking it from, say, 95 to, say, 96 or 97. But actually changing the language then created engagement across the business and started to, once again, change the culture which they were working in. So then we've got this world of technology which is really starting to hit us. And these are the, if you like, the 9 foundational elements of Industry 4.0, which we're starting to see embedded now within the supply chain. So what we have is we have systems integration, big data, simulation, virtualization, Internet of Things, the cloud, cybersecurity, autonomous systems, augmented reality, additive manufacturing, all these elements together. But where the innovations, I would argue, are really coming is where you take these and you combine them. So in other words, you take augmented reality, you then join that with the Internet of Things, and then you put it into the big data analytics. So if we're starting to think about some of the things which are actually going on, it's not one of these elements which is important, it's a number coming together. And I think that that's where we're going to see a lot of innovation going on, and we're going to hear a lot about that during today. We're starting to see, of course, all sorts of technologies, be them, autonomous vehicles, not just on the roads, but also within warehousing systems. Of course, we've got this whole concept as well of maybe drones, but also augmented reality in terms of augmented reality changing rooms. Well, not even that, you can just sit at home and see what clothes actually fit you and so on and so forth. But this type of technology is also moving into warehouses in terms of vision pick and so on and so forth. We're then finding that service is becoming increasingly important. Why? Because what we're finding is a shift in the way that businesses work. So, for example, servitization is basically the innovation of an organization's strategy from products to offering solution that meets the customer's needs. Product service systems are the integration of products and services to deliver value to the customer. Now, what's really important about this is our industry is embedded in this. It requires us to actually change the way we think about things. Rolls-Royce Total Care, of course. HP Total Care, I don't know if any of you are on that one, but basically it just sends you printer cartridges. Well, guess what? If you're sent printer cartridges, somebody has to deliver the darn things. Nespresso as well have, internet-connected coffee machines now. So they're able, you can buy a machine for £1 and they'll just send you the stuff which is coming through. There's even this crazy example from Brazil, which is Huggies. They actually have something called tweet pee, which you put on a baby's nappy. And when it pees, it tweets. I assume this is just so that parents out there can keep their children in a drawer and they don't have to worry about them until they sort of tweet. But these are the types of things that we're finding, but you can integrate that data into a delivery system, into the logistics delivery system. So we're starting to see all these things coming together. The other big impacts we're starting to find is companies coming together. And this is, I'm sure that, Microlise are doing this type of stuff and looking at this type of stuff as well. But this is just an example from JDA. If we're starting to think about, this whole thing of machine learning, artificial intelligence, they're now partnering with Google. Why? Because Google have got the AI engines. They're pumping supply chain data into those. And as they say, taking a small child and teaching it supply chain. Google has the small child. JDA has the supply chain data and expertise to teach it what's going on. This is going to revolutionize the way we forecast and manage across the networks, across the supply chains. And then blockchain, of course, we're hearing a lot about that. Really, it's 3 existing technologies. Remember I said you just join these technologies together. Encryption, distributed ledger, and agreed protocols and rules. But what's really exciting about blockchain is, imagine this, smart contracts. Now you have a contract that when this has happened, when that lorry is unloaded, when that lorry has passed through that location there, and so on and so forth, everybody gets paid. Wouldn't that be great? You might actually get paid on time for once. So these are the types of things which are starting to really impact on the world and will be impacting on us and the way that we work. And of course, this also means that we can create even more frictionless borders potentially as well, because we're going to have auditable evidence of where things have actually gone in one file, which people can, customers can actually view. But this is an announcement just made by Nike. Current model, okay, so what they're doing is they're cutting lead times from 60 to 10 days. Current model, 1 million workers, 566 factories, okay? Future model, installing 1,200 automated machines. Nearshoring, so they don't have to go cross-border, because they're going to have these small footprint manufacturing facilities. 50% less labour. Now, let's just think about that. Currently, they have 1 million workers actually employed in this supply chain. 500,000 of them are going to lose a job. And I think this is a really important point that we need to actually start thinking about, is what are the impacts of some of the decisions that you and I are making today on our society? And going back to what Kevin was saying, what are the impacts of some of the government decisions which we're making today on our society? So we have to factor in this society element as well within our decisions. So here's another question. Hopefully we'll go there. So when you're making supply chain investments, are they justified on economic only, environmental and economic only, or society, environmental and economic? If you think about your business, think about your culture. What would you say? So vote now. And hopefully here are the results. So good, we're actually getting some people are starting to think through the impact on society, but still the majority, this isn't actually being considered. The problem is that in businesses, these decisions are being made at lower and lower levels, and we need to actually think through what's going on. So change your language and you change your thoughts. Change your language, you change your thoughts, you change the culture that you're working in. And I think one thing we have to recognize for the profession is it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. This is going to be absolutely critical as we actually move forward over the coming years. Change is something which we're going to have to be dealing with all the time. So please do actually come and visit us on the stands to talk to Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and also Cranfield. and just to look at some of the opportunities that we have to be able to really move the profession forward and help things happen. Thank you all very much indeed.